Hey there, everybody. Hope you're having a really good Wednesday. Man, our thoughts are with those in Florida and the rest of the Southeast that's going to be experiencing like the remnants of Hurricane Ian. Lots of good vibes coming your way. I know it's a very scary time down there. Yesterday, we made a couple of books that utilizing, for one, junk mail, and you have these kinds of things coming through the mail all the time at this time of year. Actually, junk mail seems to really increase this time of year, so you can probably look the mail and get yourself a little flyer or advertising pamphlet or whatever and make a little book like this. The other one that we made, I think we made these Monday, is a greeting card. And this one was from my friend Miss C. It was just extraordinary. And books like this they're great for gifts, something to put in the mail as the holiday season approaches, something that's very easy to stick into an envelope and, just mail away. Or you can... What I'm doing is creating them for myself because I would just like a couple, well, more than a couple, little journals around so I can kind of keep track of things this holiday season. So I'll put an iCard in the description box, an iCard in the upper right hand corner of the video. When you see an eye with a circle around it, that's an iCard. You can click on that and see the tutorial about making the two smaller journals. Today we're going to make a beaded spine journal using the same kind of technique that we did to make the journals from Monday. Whether you call these journals or you call them a book or you call them a day timer or you call them a tracker or you call them a commonplace book, they are just super handy to have around. I got a card from my sister that I love, and we do share this really close connection. It's very hard to describe. If you have a sister that you're close to, then you understand exactly what I'm talking about. My sister is my biological sister. I also have friends that I consider sisters, and my sister-in-law, who I consider a sister as well. So we're going to use this for the cover of our book. We are going to basically do the same thing that we did with the smaller books that we made on Monday, and I want to fill this book with some papers. So let's just kind of get started. I do have everything cut and ready to roll. You can use junk mail to do this. You can use scrap paper. Just really anything that you have lying around is going to make a really nice book. And the more varied, your papers, the more interesting your book looks. I am using a pocket page in this book because I think it would just be fun. And the colors were matching, and I had it in my stash. A good thing to have things in your stash when you are doing things like this. And it is just a scrap book. Like I said, you could just use junk mail. You could do a challenge and take your junk mail that comes in your mailbox for like a Monday, Tuesday, and then make a book on Wednesday. And then take Wednesday, Thursday's junk mail, make a book on Friday, because I promise you there's just so much junk mail coming through your mailbox. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to punch the 3-hole binding. This is just a basic pamphlet binding that we got going on here. I use this very tatty washcloth that I've had forever and ever. It's just... And it's not dirty, it's just stained from me using it for years and years. I'm going to grab my pokey tool. It's funny, when I first started making books, I wanted a pokey tool really bad, and I didn't even know what to call a pokey tool. I was like, what do you call that thing? And I would hear Jenny Belly say pokey tool, and I was like, well, what do you call that? And I finally found one from We Are Memory Keepers. I was like, well, I'm glad I knew what that is now. I was using an awl. Chris bought me AWL, an awl, when I started making books, and I knew I wanted to punch through things like cardboard and tagboard and cardstock and things like that. Let's put a couple of, just to hold things in place, I like to use just a couple of paper clips, and that works just fine for me. If you want to use a binder clip, definitely just do your own thing. You got to kind of eyeball this and just make sure that you have things straight. And then let's go ahead and punch our holes. So we're going to punch one in the middle, and one about an inch from the middle on the bottom, and then about an inch on the middle from the top. Now we're ready to bond. Let's talk a little bit about binding, and let's talk a little bit about how we're going to add some really jazzy elements to the spine of this book. I've got my binding needle out here. I have gone through and separated some beads that I knew were going to fit on the binding needle, because what we're going to do is make a beaded spine journal. These come together really quickly. They're a lot of fun. Another great way to use what you have if you have a bunch of beads. I will give you a couple of hints. The first thing is, when you're using a needle, when you're threading the needle, use embroidery floss. This is J.P. Coates embroidery floss. There's a big difference between embroidery floss and craft thread. I was 64 years old before I figured this out. Craft thread has a twist to it, and embroidery floss does not. To make sure that I'm not getting too bulky with my beads and embroidery floss, I take two lengths of embroidery floss out. You know, embroidery floss has 6 threads, so I take 2 out. So what I'm left with is 4 strands of embroidery floss to do this project. Like I said, I had some beads that Miss Michelle sent me. Aren't they beautiful? I wanted to make sure that all of the beads fit on my binding needle. Now my binding needle is kind of chunky. I needed to be sure that my beads were going to fit. So what I did was I took my beads and I made like a kebab on my binding needle, and then I just made sure, that all of them are going to fit. It saves a lot of aggravation. You know, you get into a project and then that darn bead doesn't fit, or the beads don't fit, and it's just, it's just irksome, it's just irritating, and you kind of lose your flow, and art is all about, the flow, right? All right, well, let's start binding this baby up. We're going to start on the inside, all right? And then we have this little tail on the outside of our journal. See that? This is where we are going to put our beads on all the way up to here, okay? So see that? That's where our bead strand will stop. So let's go ahead and start adding some beads. And we can add a good many at a time. You want your bead strand to be taut, not loose. So let's see what we see. And you're not having to stop for anything. Let's talk about like while we're doing this, cards, the cards that you could use. You could use birthday cards, anniversary cards. The Dollar Tree always has like cards for, they used to have them 2 for $1, but I guess now they're 2 for $1.25. All right. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 beads on here. I can see that that 10th bead is going to be over the hole, and I don't want that. So I'm going to take that 10th bead off, because if I allow that 10th bead to be there, it will not, my beaded spine won't be tight enough. So let's rethread our needle, because that one had to come off. It's better to have fewer beads than a whole bunch of beads and your beaded spine not be as taut as you need it. Okay. All right, so we're going to pick up our book. Remember, this is right here. It's really a good idea to just kind of hang on to this while you're beading. All right, so we're going to go back through. Also, it's a really good idea to not chunk your book up with papers, because if you chunk your book up too much with papers, you're going to have the problem that I'm having right now, which is how to get the needle back through here. All right, so here we are on the outside of our book. There's the hole that we need to go through. So we're going through. And there we go. There is our first little tract of beads. We're going to come back into the center of the book, go through the bottom hole. I'm going to do the same thing. I want everything tight. I put 9 on the last one. I think I'll put 8 on this one. Okay. All right. I'm going to look at that. Yep, I probably could use one more right there. Just have to kind of eyeball it and figure it out. And you will. All right. That's good. And kind of pick up my book. We'll go through the center hole again. And this puts me back on the inside of the book. Remember when we were doing this Monday, I cautioned you about bringing this last needle, the last binding that you're going to do through the book. It's best to move this middle thread that you've been using out of the way. Okay, so let's get everything tight here. Just as tight as you can possibly get it without breaking anything. Let's take one last look at the spine here. It's looking good. And we're going to tie things off. Now this book lends itself very nicely for use as a gift. You could stuff the pockets here with little notes, or maybe ephemera, or maybe photographs, whatever you want to put in here. And that is how you make A little beaded spine journal. Isn't she pretty? And the spine is nice and tight. The beads are snug up against the spine of the book, and that's what you want. It's a really fun project, y'all. So just another little something to add to your stash of books to make for gifts or special occasions, or in my case, these are just kind of going around the house and helping me kind of keep organized. I've got a big destash project going on. I've got cleaning projects going on. I've got work projects going on. I've got all kinds of things like happening right now. So it's really nice to have a book. I spoke with our sweet Wanda, and Wanda said, I'm always walking around with a pen and a notebook in my hand. And I was like, girl, I am with you. That's exactly the way I operate too. Because your mind gets kind of cluttered, and you forget what you were thinking about, or I do, and I think we're kind of all like that right now. It's a difficult time in the world. It's a little bit of a challenge to keep your thoughts straight and keep yourself in alignment. So maybe this is a book about how to be a little more spiritually aware, how to be a little more mindful, how to be, one of these can be for frugality, one of them can be for recipes. It's just, it's a whatever you want to make book. So 2 little books that we made Monday, and a lovely beaded spine book created from a greeting card today. Thanks a lot for hanging out, y'all. There's a thanks button in the bottom of the video, at the bottom of the video, and I really appreciate your thanks. Those are like tips in my tip jar as a former musician. Thank you very much. See you later. Bye.